Good evening and welcome back to 13 Horror Nights. It's episode 4 and tonight's movie is Capture, Kill, Release. Now this one is kind of an interesting one in terms of how I even came to know about this movie because it's not big budget, high profile. The last 3 movies, these were all big Hollywood movies. I think Bird Box was Hollywood, but whatever. And those are all like big budget movies that were released in theaters and stuff like that. This is an obscure found footage movie. And back when I was doing research for the very first 31 Horror Nights in 2017, I came across this article that was like 5 recent found footage movies you haven't seen that will restore your faith in the medium. And for the life of me, I can't find that article. I looked for it and I can't find it. That is where I learned about Be My Cat, A Film for Anne, and Hell House LLC, 2 of the movies that I watched in the first 31 Horror Nights. And Be My Cat, A Film for Anne was very good, and Hell House LLC is the best found footage movie I've ever seen. And I figured that since we're going back to recent movies, why not watch more from that list, and this was one of them. Capture, Kill, Release, I knew the plot is that there's this couple, a man and a woman, and they decide, I guess for fun, to kill a person and try to get away with it. And you only really get one quick summary, and it just says things get ugly when one of them gets cold feet. And from the trailer, I get the suspicion that it's the boyfriend who gets cold feet about it, because it seems like the woman is all gung-ho about it and like is really excited to do it. There's something very different about this movie compared to a lot of the other found footage movies I've seen, from the point of view that it's like, from the villain's perspective, it's a little bit like Be My Cat in the respect that you see this weird dynamic between the 2 main characters, the boyfriend and girlfriend, and the way that they interact with each other. It's like, this weird thing is like, from the trailer, I just sort of get the impression that they fight and they don't know whether they can trust each other, they don't know like what to believe with each other, and there's crying and there's arguing, and from what I can tell from the trailer, the acting is pretty good, and this is the type of movie that requires very good acting. I will admit, though, out of all the found footage movies I'm seeing this month, this is probably the one that I'm the least excited to see, the one that I expect to be the least good, but I've been proven wrong in the past, and I don't know, this one's going to be kind of a wild card. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, and I guess I'll find out. I'll see you guys then. So I just finished watching Capture, Kill, Release, and wow, that movie really was something. I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I respect it. I understand what it was going for, and it did what it was going for very well, but I didn't really enjoy watching it, nor would I really recommend that another person watches it. This movie is a lot like Be My Cat, A Film for Anne, in the fact that you're watching a psychopath, basically. Or maybe not like a psychopath, but just someone who is very wrong in the head try to go through their sick, twisted fantasies. But it's gonna sound weird. It's not fun to watch the way that it was sometimes fun to watch in Be My Cat. Because it's like, there's something about the way that Adrian and Be My Cat made this entertaining, made this kind of fun, even though it is just as terrible what he's doing. But in this movie, the thing is that I was right in the assumption that it's the girlfriend who's the one who's really gung-ho and take charge of the situation. She's the one who really wants to do it. I'm not saying that the boyfriend doesn't... Okay, their names are Jen and Farhang. The Jen is the one who really wants to do it, but it's not like Farhang is like apprehensive from the beginning. From the beginning, he definitely seems to want to do this too. And this movie does play up something that's very, very ubiquitous to found footage, and it does it wonderfully in this. When you use found footage, just a camera's point of view, you completely remove any possible aspect of framing, like who the movie wants you to like or dislike. You're just watching things happen. And this movie definitely does play that up, especially with Farhang's character, because once things start going down, he does continue going with it, but he still acts like disgusted by it, and it's this weird thing where like he's both like trying to do it and do it right, but he's also trying to sort of shift the blame on Jen. And yes, Jen is the one who puts everything into motion. She's the one who is always coming up with ideas. She's the one who's constantly saying, let's do this, let's do that. Let's kill this guy. Let's kill that guy. Or we should do this and do that. And I feel like in a way, this movie is sort of like the idea itself. As a concept, it's very interesting as a movie, just like how I'm sure for some people, it would be such a thrill to kill a person. But when you actually get down to doing it, it's kind of just a slog. I will say that this movie has some top-notch practical effects. Like, the gore in this movie is pretty intense. And I'll also say that I thought the acting was pretty good for the most part. Both of the leads, Jen and Farhang, which are their names in real life, they do pretty well. I would say that Jen does a better job because, I don't know, it's just like she seems so normal, but the more that you watch this movie, the more you realize just how sick and twisted her mind is. And then she's completely off the deep end. She is just in it. But Farhang, it's like weird, like on the nice edge, and it's very interesting to watch, but it's also not that fun to watch. I would also like to point out the fact that this movie starts out just like how Paranormal Activity starts out, except for the roles has been reversed. It's the girlfriend with the camera instead of the boyfriend. Or maybe they're husband and wife, I don't know. They might be. They never really state that. And what's funny is that they never actually, like, talk about how these two people met, or how these two people came to the conclusion that it would be fun to kill a person, because I don't know, like, honestly, I don't know what you would do to make that. I think it was a good move for them to start at, okay, we're going to kill a person, instead of trying to set it up, because I don't know, I can't really imagine how a person would do that, like, and especially how they would, like, make it in terms of a movie. And I think one thing I learned about movies is that it's interesting to watch people have arguments and discussions, and, like, even heated arguments, but it's not really entertaining or interesting to just watch two people yell at each other, and that's a lot of this movie. It's a lot of yelling and cursing and calling each other names, and it's just tiring after a while. Like, the shock value starts to wear down as the movie keeps going. In my review for Being My Cat, I said it had such a good premise and such good execution, but it didn't really know where to end it. I think that this movie had the same problem, except it was a lot worse in this case, because they just sort of, like, hung there, and then they introduced other things, and I can't talk about that without going into spoilers, but I think my overall review is I understand what this movie was trying to do, and it did do that very well, but that's not something I want to watch, and that's not really something I'm going to recommend that another person watches. It's good as, like, a technical achievement, it's good as a psychological study, but I don't think it works as a movie that well. Alright, now let's go into some spoilers. Now, one thing that made me rate it as relatively high as I ended up rating it, even though how unpleasant a lot of it is the way that they did the psychological study into Jen's mind is very well done. You see her, like, go from, like, it's so weird. Like, it starts out with her saying, like, oh, this is gonna be so fun, this is gonna be so cool, and then you see her, she's trying to do the cold calculating serial killer thing, but she can't do it. She's not good at it. She feels too much to do that. And you see that, and she's trying to make this right in her head. And something that a lot of people do in these situations is that they try to shift blame. And one thing that, at the beginning, she, like, ran into this rich guy who was mean to her, called her bad names, and she was in the middle of talking with some homeless guy named Gary, and she, like, backed up and, like, knocked into him, and that caused, like, him to go on a tirade against her. And she was telling Farhang, all right, we found the guy, we found the person that we want to kill, and he kept saying, no, you're making it too personal, you're getting too emotionally involved. So eventually she decides, it's not they decide, she decides that they're going to kill Gary, the homeless guy. They actually, like, pregame, I should stop saying they, she's the one who sets everything into motion. She pregames by killing a cat, by drowning it, and it's so weird. Again, she was trying to do the, like, oh, you're so cute, shh, quiet, just sleep, but she can't do it. She's not that type of person. She's not an Adrienne Tofay. She just it seems like she's in way over her head, but she feels like she's so far gone that she needs to, like, make it right in her head. They from the beginning, they said, we're going to document this whole thing. And by the time that the body of Gary is hidden, Farhang is completely done with it. He just wants to forget about everything. I'm not saying that he was a victim in this. He was complicit in it the entire way. There were so many times where he could have, like, physically made her stop, or, like, just stopped doing it. He took part of it too. He's not as bad as Jen, but obviously he's no saint. But by then he's just done with it, and he keeps telling her over and over to stop filming him, and that is something that's unfortunately in a lot of found footage movies, and it's not very fun. It's kind of annoying, but I understand why it's there. And there's a point where he actually smashes the camera that they've been using, so then it's just her. She is using a like a really old camera. They say it's from 1983, I think, and she's filming getting the guy who is mean to her, the rich guy, and they discover that he has a mistress and that he's cheating on his wife with, so she kidnaps both of them and brings them to the basement, and again, she's really trying to do, like, the Saw type of thing, where she, like, puts a syringe full of, like, bleach into the mistress's neck and says, like, hey, dude, if you want her to live, just give me the word, but if you want her to die and save yourself, I'll do it. I'll push down the syringe, and you can't understand anything he's saying. He has a ball gag in his mouth, but it does indicate that he wants to save his own skin, and then she, kills the mistress, who was honestly maybe not a completely innocent party, but and nothing even close to what happened to her. Then Farhang comes in and they start fighting again, and she keeps saying over and over, it's because of this guy that we had to kill Gary, and because they was like, okay, we're gonna kill this rich guy, no one's gonna miss him, and then Farhang kept saying no, and then Jen went and brought Gary into their house so they could kill Gary. And she's trying to, like, flip this in her head as it's somebody else's fault that we killed an innocent man. And they keep arguing, and she at one point, like, she has a hammer and she keeps threatening to cave the rich guy's face in with a hammer, and they're arguing, and at one point, like, the guy in the chair, like, yells at her one too many times that she reaches over and bashes him in the head with a hammer. And then what happens next I did not think was shot very well. It's like him taking the hammer away from her, but he's, like, pulling away, and then the camera turns away, and then you hear, like, a crack, and then Jen falls to the floor. Now, I think what they're going for was that in, like, the heat of the moment, he grabbed the hammer and then hit her with it. But the way it was shot made it look more like there was, like, a knife somewhere. I don't know. But in the end, she gets, like, hit. And the way this movie started was, like, a muffled one-sided 911 call, which is pretty common with these types of movies. And it's him calling the ambulance because he wants to save Jen, which is because, like, a few minutes ago he was saying, like, you're the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I hate you, get out of my house, get out of my life. But now that she is dying on the floor, he's, like, heartbroken about it. And again, it's the thing where, like, you don't know what the movie wants you to feel about it, you're just watching it happen. And it's weird because the guy in the chair keeps moaning and yelling, and eventually, again, he gets mad too, and then kills him with the hammer. And the movie ends with him sitting there waiting for the police to come, and he says to the camera, it's like, well, Jen, you didn't know how this movie was going to end. Looks like you finally got an end for this movie. Capture Kill Release has really good acting and really good effects, but I think the problem is that this isn't a premise that you want to make into a movie. Like, I understand the idea of it, but again, put into practice, this isn't something that a person is going to really want to watch. It is an interesting psychological study and looking into the mind of a person who wants to kill but also wants to remain, like, the good guy in their minds. But still, if you want to see that idea done in a found footage movie done better, I would recommend Me, My Cat, a film for Anne. Like, that movie had its problems too, I'll admit that, but Capture Kill Release has more problems. Alright, I'll see you guys tomorrow.